The legal system is not going to do it for any woman. He ended up beating me at a conference in Miami, so almost taking my life. Strangled. He ended up pleading guilty, third-degree felony of battery and by strangulation. So Florida has a point system. So they gave him, because he was a public servant as a fire lieutenant for 27 years, they gave him points. So he missed jail by like 4 points. He got 1 year of house arrest with a tether on his leg and 3 years of probation, I guess.
He almost killed you.
Yeah, in front of my kids, in front of my children.
Marni Sawicki, the former mayor of Cape Coral, Florida, is a passionate advocate for women's rights and safety. With years of experience in politics and public service, Marni has dedicated her career in improving the legal system and advocating for victims and abuse. After surviving personal trauma, Marni now fights to change a broken system that fails to protect those who need it most. Her mission? To create lasting change in how we protect and empower survivors of domestic violence and abuse.
First of all, totally want to thank you from the bottom of our heart for joining in to the On Target for Success podcast. And one way that you're really helping us is not only by watching, but if you could do us the favor so that we can reach more women and help more women, if you could please subscribe, like, share. Those things are huge in terms of YouTube. And that is the thing that's going to help us reach more women worldwide. So let me thank you. I know you're a busy woman, but by taking time to just hit that little like button and subscribe, you are doing your part in serving women globally. And I can't thank you enough. All right, well, here we are again. I'm so excited about this episode of On Target for Success. I am here with the beautiful Marni. And what I'm most excited about is the timing could not be more perfect with what's going on in our country right now here in the US. With actually the time that we're recording this, not sure when I'll hit edit, but the time that we're recording this, Biden has just dropped out as the next presidential candidate. And we've got Kamala. I always mess up her name a little bit because, it's interesting place to be. And then we've got Trump is the only person that was up for as a Republican candidate. So it's going to be very interesting because one thing that Marni is, she is definitely a change maker, a breaker of old traditions because she's so all with heart. So everybody pay attention because we are here with Marni Sawicki, the candidate for governor of Michigan 2026. I'm going to shout out, she is an absolute true, may I say, Democrat. And the reason I'm so excited about this is I would say, in your book, she's also an author, she's a speaker, she's a consultant. This girl is the bomb. She has a master's in business, and in addition to consulting for some major corporations and growing different companies, she is just all over the place of goodness and definitely on target for success. And it is such an honor to have her on the show today. And we're gonna roll on with lots of questions. So thank you, Marni, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, is there any shout outs you want to give as we start to roll, or anything you want to?
Oh, no, I mean, it's just I'm to all the women who are, moving and shaking and stepping up to lead, and just like those women, those there, you see them now, they are popping up everywhere. So I just get goosebumps thinking about all the women who, it is our time. It's our time to bring things forward and make a difference and really just take us into the future instead of looking back. So that's what we do best.
Absolutely. I don't know why I'm having good. It's the channeling kind of thing. You said that, and then in a minute, I'm like, it is like we've been standing on the shoulders of these giants, of these women that had it so much more difficult than us, and they fought so that we could be here today. And then I just said in our challenge, I had an online challenge today, and I just said in that, I'm like, now it's our time. us women over 40, it's our time to be those giants, to
Yeah.
pave the way for our younger sisters, and to really just shout out to them as they're stepping into a totally unknown place with all the technology and all the changes. I'm not quite sure yet if we're going for, I'm only speaking about the US because there's some great global changes and then you'll see setbacks. So
Yeah.
it's really, I'm excited to have this
There's some ebb
dialogue.
and flow there, ebb and flow, ebb and flow. I mean, it's, it amazes me how some days I can be so depressed about the future of the news, and then I just realize, you know what? I wake up the next day, it's all about perspective. Let's keep going, right?
What I said today is like, okay, God put us here. We are supposed to bloom where we're planted. I tell my little younger girls, I'm like, you don't run away. You're not looking for another country. You are here to fight and to bring the goodness. You were planted here to make the change. That's why we're here. We cannot be silent. We must speak up. You know, I have friends that are Republicans and Democrats, and that's why I love you, is because you're the voice. You may be running in one way, and you are positively bringing togetherness, and I think that's fantastic. But Marty, you would, like, I was so blessed to witness you make history in my town. You no longer live here, but when you were in Cape Coral, Florida, here where I live, you were the first ever mayor of Cape Coral. I mean, you broke the good old boy network, and it was like, woo.
It was something. It was hard to imagine. Even looking back at it, it feels like it's a dream in a lot of days. But um, yeah, and no, and the funny but great piece of that was is no one thought I was going to do it. And I think that is testament to these times too, because even in doubt, even when people are doubting you, when they don't think you can do it, you just have to have that knowing, that inner knowing of I'm doing things for like you just said, showing up. I'm doing things for the right reasons. I'm doing things because I know in my heart it's for the right reasons. And you just move forward and think and and I say spirit, let spirit take that where it needs to take it. And
Yeah.
it's always done that with my life. And it continues to amaze me when I just show up and take those inspired actions. I love to say inspired actions, or the
Mhm.
inspired right next action,
Yes,
whatever that is, and just
yes,
trust. It's kind of like a leap every time you walk, know that I don't know where I'm going and I don't need to because there is a higher power that's taking me there and has always taken me there. So,
yes. Ooh, I told you this episode was gonna be special. I told you guys. So, Marnie, because if I love this, because the women that I usually have on this show are so, like, if you see them, you're like, man, she's confident, she's got it all together, and we know that where you are now is a result of all the challenging things that you've overcome. And like like where you said, just take the next right action, the
right.
next inspired action. But can you take us back a little bit to, you overcome a lot? Like, you have an amazing book.
Thank you.
But go ahead and say the title again, because I think it would be
Oh,
fun to hear
gosh,
about.
I know it's gonna, what?
Yes,
Before I
dear.
say the title, I have to laugh because I have to first preface this by saying the best-selling author I was working with was the one that came up with it, and I fought him tooth and nail. I'm like, can it be something inspirational? Can it be something like, Ms. Mayor, how to overcome adversity? And he's like, no, no, it needs to be this because it will fall into place. And after the announcement yesterday, or that, or 2 days ago, that Kamala is now coming in forward as our candidate,
Yeah.
and the attacks that are going to be coming and going at her, it kind of
Mm-hmm.
makes sense now, and I understand why he did it. So anyway, it's Ms. Mayor, how Republicans and my ex-husband tried to ruin my life. And I look at it more of, it's less about that and more about inspiration and where I found that and how I found it, to move forward. It's I like to say there are no victims in life, only volunteers. So I don't volunteer to be in that place anymore. So
Yeah.
but
And-
but it is my story and it is true, and and
yes.
it's a part. I always say I wrote it and now I can put it on the shelf, and I've kind of let it go, and it
Mm-hmm.
it is that experience. So
And well, there's a saying also, like, think it and ink it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put it out there, though, it's really an overcomer story. Like, the marketing side, and that's what I love. Like, as you watch the news or you watch the politics right now, I try to remind people to keep it into perspective, because sometimes you have to tell people what they want to hear so that you can get them to hear the
Yeah.
truth. Because
And that's
their
true.
span of intelligence or life experience can be so great that they may be in hate mode, and so that word would speak. And then when they get in there, say, "Oh, she's not really a hater at all.
Mhm.
She
You know,
really
that
did that to get
that
your attention."
empathy, yeah, that empathy is key to life. I mean, not just politics, being able to just put myself in someone else's shoes and say, okay, I can see why you have that experience, or those viewpoints, because based
Yeah,
on your experience and based on your lack of experience, whatever that may be, good, bad, it's not good or bad. Um,
yeah,
but being able to take myself and put them in their shoes and go, okay, so we just have to meet somewhere where, and I always say meet them where they're at. Where
yeah.
are they at that point? And that's where I meet them. And if that is in, you know, a lower vibe, is that if that's where, then sometimes you just have to recognize that's where they're at. And I don't choose to challenge it. I don't choose to resist it. It's my truth, it's their truth, and
Yes,
that's
let's come to a good truth, right? Let's
right.
come to a
Right.
healthy truth. We can both learn and love with each other and find, like, my tagline is be the solution, right?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I think that what I also find inspiring, like going back to like where you're meeting them at where they're at, you have there's so many great stories that you have that make you such a powerful advocate for women. Is you were at a young age, right? So you've suffered abuse, both sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, from every angle, emotional abuse,
Yes.
and that's
I'm
what
not
I love.
smiling for that, but yes, yes, I
Oh,
have.
yeah, it's kind of like a flesh. Yes, I have affirmation, right? And I'm still here and I'm coming back stronger. That's why
Right.
you're smiling, right? It's like, yes, I'm an overcomer. But take us back, because how do you, not like earlier you said, not a victim, you volunteer, but how do you get past that, right? Because how do you say, I'm always like, okay, me too, now what? Like,
Right.
what is your, going back to that, can you share a little bit of that story? Because I noticed that when we're vulnerable and we're honest, people are like, "Oh, now I can relate," because
Right.
you're really a leader, and I think the beauty in sharing that you too opens up the possibility.
Yeah. God, it does go back a long time.
Yeah, right, I
Um,
know.
yeah, and I think the most part for me, um, my story is, to be honest with you, I don't know many women that haven't had some of my similar stories. I mean, it's sad, but it's also a testament to where we're at today, that women are starting to speak out, women are having the courage to overcome that. Um, you know, from date rape to sexual harassment in the workplace. I sued an employer for sexual harassment and won. I have, when I was one of one woman of 26 men, in a large corporation as vice president of marketing, and held them accountable, even though, at the time that was unheard of. My career was, I thought, tanked, at that point doing that, only to have my largest client call about 6 months later and say, okay, you know what, we want you to come on board. And it was the best decision I've ever made. So, I mean, these things have happened throughout my life. um, I remember the day I wanted to run for mayor, or decided to run for mayor. Had never really considered it. And Cape Coral always has those newsletters they send out every month that say, "What are we doing? Here's what's going on." And I'd never read it really. My mother's and just to back up, my mother's in politics, so I kind of had like, no, I'm not doing this. No, I'm not doing this. She's school board for 10 years, county commissioner candidate. Trustee for the UAW, you name it, my mother's done it.
No.
And I didn't want that. I was like, no, 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 politics not for me. And then I had a daughter who was ADHD with a reading disability, and I found myself being in PTO. And I always say, I do laugh and say PTO is a wonderful starting point for politics because you care, you're in something that you truly your heart's in, and you want to make real change, and so you can see how that works. And so with Maddie being special needs, I show up as PTO, and I don't know, I just gravitate. I'm sitting there and there's these meetings are like 4 hours long, and I'm like, oh no, this is, I got stuff to do. So I'm going to run for president, and we're just going to go ahead, and I'm going to run on the fact that these are going to be an hour meeting. We are going to be in and out if you don't have it on the agenda. Next meeting, and I won. And so I served 2 years as president, and then moved down to Florida and served as 3 years as PTO vice president in Cape Coral. And truly, just so I could be there to stand at the door with the teachers and say, "How's Maddie doing today? How's Maddie doing today? Did she do good on her grade?" Like, so I laugh at that, but it also got me out meeting people. And so one day I like I said, did not throw that newsletter away, and I'm sitting there, legs up. First time I'd had some free time, and I go pull out the magazine, the articles, and I start reading through it, and I'm like, elections. Hmm. And I just kind of sat there, and I just had that little voice in my head going, "You need to run. This is," and I will tell you, Amy, so in Cape Coral, it is at the time, it's mostly, everybody thinks of it as an old person's town. Like, and I don't mean that in any disrespect
Yeah,
to,
yeah, no, they
I don't
come
know
into
what I'm not trying to age discriminate, but it is usually like all the surrounding communities are 60 plus, 60 years old plus.
mm-hmm.
Cape Coral, ironically, was 43 years old average age. But yet everywhere I went, there were only activities for people who over 60. And so I remember being frustrated because I'm a single woman, 43 or 42 at the time, divorced. I'm like, how am I supposed to meet my girls? How am I supposed to meet friends? How am I supposed to meet boys, men, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? This town needs an overhaul. And it just kind
Yeah.
of took me by surprise. I called up a couple girlfriends. I said, hey, look, so my city council seat, I'm thinking of running for city council. And at first it was just council. And my girlfriend's like, let's research it. We research it, find out, no, the seat's not open for another 2 years that I was living in. And I said, but mayor's open. And she's like, yeah, mayor, you can live anywhere in the city. And I said, huh, let's do that. And so we literally in the middle, it was a Seminole football game. We're in this driveway watching it, drinking wine with the guys were watching football. My friends from PTO were drinking wine, and we just started tossing around ideas and came up with a campaign. And from there, we just kind of took off, and I don't think we ever looked back. And
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people told me, you can't do it. You can't, you're either not going to raise enough money. I was told I needed at least 85,000 to run and win. I ran the primary on $12,000, and I run the entire campaign on $33,000. So no one, you know what I mean? Like when I
Hear that
say,
song, what a girl wants, what a girl needs.
well, because it does,
Yeah.
the universe does provide. And I swear that I
Yes. Yes.
believe in that. Whenever
Yes.
I have needed it, it's there. And in all of those instances, from debates, I mean, how I met you, even, I truly feel that was a gift from God, because I remember I had not done my first campaign like message yet. And it
Yeah.
was the first debate, and someone brought me to you. I don't even remember. Oh, it was another holistic doctor that's a friend of mine, that's a friend of yours. And he's like, I think I dated him once or twice. I don't know. But he's like, you got to meet this woman. She's amazing. And you walked me through all of my messaging and how to, that first opening, what they see in me, how do they see me? And I opened my mouth, and I just remember the words flowing out from everything we had talked about. And it was like it was channeled, it just came out
Power.
exactly how it was supposed to. And I remember going, oh yeah, I won every straw poll from then on out. It was just 6 men and a woman, down to the clothes I wore. I still decided, I'm like, I'm not wearing pantsuits. I'm gonna wear dresses, and I mean, I'm gonna be true to myself. I'm not gonna
Yes,
sit and
yes. I was gonna say. I was like, a couple things, because there's so much we could talk about. But I want to, because staying on this, and not to interrupt you, but you're so powerful. It's just like these beautiful women on here. You're like, oh, it's just what I do. But going back, they say, like, even going back to the PTO meetings, what women do for their children is the most powerful, incredible. Look at what the power of that baby, wanting to give her the best life. Like, I became a substitute teacher just so I would know the teachers that my kids were. And
Exactly.
to
Because
do it all.
knowing them, you are able to connect to them. You're able
Yeah.
to, and then they connect to your kid, and then they, there was just extra love there, and they knew I'd be there with cookies going, and
You did too. That's what I want you. I want people to pay attention to these benchmarks, because as women, what I notice with the women that I interview on here, you guys just brush it off like, oh yeah, it's just what I did. I ran for people, but you made a choice
yeah,
to do the best for your kid, and that's such an inspiration that that you can do it. Like, we have different starting points. I get that in life. Some of us have more tragedy coming out. Some of us don't start in the same neighborhoods or whatever. But
mhm,
that desire, that choice that every day you get up and make is ultimately yours. How you're
that's
going
right.
to handle the day, who you're going to fight for. And then fast forward, you didn't change. You stayed in alignment with your true self. And I think that is so powerful. Like you said, you wore dresses, you kept in your
Oh yeah,
feminine, you didn't jump into the masculine. And that's where the strength was you said, I'm a beautiful, feminine, intelligent woman. And that is my
tough
superpower.
woman, tough woman,
Yes.
tough
Yes.
woman in this dress. But
Right?
yes, no, you're absolutely correct. There is power in authenticity. I mean, just being able to say, I stand here and I plant my feet, and this is who I am. And I find that those people who don't resonate with that don't stay long in your life. I mean, they really don't.
God.
So
I
I
think,
mean, really, thank God, but they don't.
yeah.
And the more you are able to plant that and be comfortable in that, those haters just kind of disappear, and you don't see them. I mean, they're literally, I used to say to my team all the time, they're like, they're talking about this. I said, then don't listen. Because if we
Yeah.
don't listen and we don't respond, then they're just left talking to themselves, and let them talk. Like,
I love that quote by Einstein. He said the same thing. He's like, arrows of hate have been shot at me too, none of which I've, paid attention to, or something like that. I'm
mhm,
paraphrasing. But I like the archery reference, but it's that same thing. Like, they don't hit you, right? If
right.
you see them or you don't let them, because that's something really cool going back to how you transformed the city was like during your tenure. You were here from 2013 to 2017, but we saw huge growth and development. What would you say were some of your key projects or initiatives that you were most proud of, that you're like, wow, when people get together, this happens, like in the areas, especially public safety and like urban
Yeah.
planning, those things that you were talking about? Because this is huge.
Yeah, no, I know. And I look back at these days and go, my goodness, lots of growth. To give you some perspective, we were the 10th largest city at the time, and no one acted like it. That was the big deal. They were so busy infighting about,
Hmm.
mostly a male, most, in fact, before my council came around, I don't think there were very many councils that had under 70 years old that were on the council. So, um,
Wow.
yeah, no. And so I always used to say, when you start getting your power, when we start recognizing what we can do, we are the gorilla in the room. We're the city that can go on the state and national platform. We're the ones that can start driving that growth and driving the narrative. Like, there's power in that. And so that was one of the big things I was willing to do. And we started with the League of Mayors. This first time in I mean decades, that we started to actually actively participate in the state, Florida League of Mayors, the Florida League of Cities, and the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And I just have to tell a quick story because it's funny, how we started. The very
Just stay
first
there. I
U.S.
don't know what
Conference of Mayors
happened.
meeting I go to, um, I remember I'm looking at and they break you up by size, city size. So I'm looking and I'm like, okay, there's 0 to
Hang on,
50,000
we'll come
people,
back.
50 to 100, 150, and then there's 150,000 plus. So I'm like, well, there's mine. So I go, everybody's breaking up to go into these. I think we were in Washington, D.C. for this. It was the first time I'd been to the White House. And we're breaking up into sections, and I'm all of a sudden having to go through metal detectors. And I'm like, why aren't the others going through metal detectors? And I look
Yeah.
in front of me, and here is Bill de Blasio from New York City, and behind me is Marty Welsh from Boston. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I am in a very large group here. And so we go through and I sit down, and one person leans over to me when I sit down. They're like, excuse me, are you in the right, are you in the right meeting? And I said, is this 150,000 people plus? And they're like, yeah. And I go, yeah, no, I'm in the right meeting. I'm in there exactly. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, people at home don't even recognize this is what we're in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this is our people, not, the small dinky cities, which there's nothing wrong with that, but my God, we're big. So that was it. But honestly, it was really sad because we'd gone through, the hardest foreclosure. We were the hardest hit by foreclosure.
Yeah.
So our employees had gone 7 years without raises. They had these cars that were literally breaking down. Volunteers were having to go out and start them every morning to make sure they started. We hadn't put
Wow.
any money in investment in infrastructure or capital improvements. So when that came around, we did pay parity, and we made it right. And so our public servants, our people who your EMS, your not EMS because that was county, but your police and fire, we made that right. We went to the 75th percentile. So we gave them raises, we gave them new equipment. But at the same time, the 4 years I was there, we never raised a dollar in taxes because it was really about like
Yeah.
reorganizing your priorities, right?
Yeah.
Instead of
Yes.
just, and having tough conversations with your constituents to say, I know you want streetlights, but is it the best use of our money there, right? And having those, and or maybe it's bike safety. We really need to start putting some money into advertising for, so that kids know to wear vests, and you know what I mean, that they're not on the roads, and so that we're not destroying our natural beauty, whatever. But I will tell you the biggest thing that I feel so much pride over, not, I mean, there's a lot, but two things too. When the Supreme Court came out and decided that they were going to support, when they were deciding on same sex marriage, um, I went ahead and signed the Mayors for Freedom to Marry, and you would have thought that the city would have had a heart attack. I mean, I had council members who wanted to censure me, telling me I couldn't sign it. How dare you? And when that passed, that was just such a proud moment, knowing that I was the only mayor from Tampa to Miami that signed that in Florida. Um,
Wow.
gave me pride. It gave me just knowing that I could have that voice. And that again is that voice that we had no idea, made that much difference.
And I
So
have a question around that. Because what is it that people are afraid of? Like, what's the fear of allowing people that love each other to get married? Because usually I think hate comes from fear or not
absolutely.
knowing. And I've been of that too. Like, I keep growing in my education, and so if there's something that I notice, yeah, it's like, what's the root fear
Mm.
around letting people do that? So, like,
Yeah.
letting same get married, or
I
do you
don't
know
I,
fear?
I
Like,
mean, I always look at it same with race. I just think it's based on, like you just said, not being exposed to people,
Mhm.
that are of that have that mindset or of that value. When people get into the bubble, where they're
Yeah.
only just talking to themselves, I think at least in my opinion, that is kind of where we don't hear other people's, it becomes a fear because people are like, they're indoctrinating, they're gonna take your kids, and they're going to make this of them, and they're gonna drag them to drag queen. you know
Yeah.
I've never
Yes.
I don't know. I drag queens, you know what? They're the most joyful people I've ever met. They're living authentic lives. They don't care what you think now, you know? So I think it's a perfect way to have kids see that you can be whatever you want to be, you know what that is. And as long as it's joyful, as long as it's your
Kind,
true,
respectful.
right.
Well, I do have some things that this is really interesting because you've probably researched this more than me. I'm just bringing in both sides, so
Mhm.
I'd like to hear. So I'm not that experienced in it, but like you hear the things like, well, why right now, for example, is there like a month of Pride and not a month for the veterans or not a month like. There's all these things that are so out of balance that
Mhm.
I don't know from your perspective, like what were the criteria? And I like that you used to pass it? Like, was there like a couple that you got to know that educated you, or where did your heart come from in that arena to make that decision? I like to hear the stories
Yeah,
behind the.
I just know so many people, from high school on. I was in plays,
Mhm.
so I always did
Yeah.
musicals, stuff like that for high school, and so I don't know. I think it was just being able to be around them and not in a capacity of knowing about their sexuality or their sexual orientation, but getting to know them as a person. You know, who
Yeah.
are they and what do they
Yeah.
enjoy to do and how are those similar to mine? And, you know, it just, I know a lot of people who were in the closet for many, many, many years and then came out. And I know them as that person before, and I see them
Mhm.
today and they're so much more happy. You know, you just see them living an authentic life, being able to go and do what they want to do. And I've always believed in, you know, again, I'm not one to push myself on anyone. So my views, my whatever. I mean, it's for me to state my truth, and either
Yes.
people it resonates or it doesn't. But I try to leave the judgment alone, you know, the judging part. But I just know a lot of people. My assistant was or is gay, and she was number 13 on the list for in Florida to be married to her partner Lori, and both of them are just amazing women and strong women, and you know, it helped
Yeah.
having that too with seeing because she brought to a lot of light, and again, just asking questions, you know, asking
Mhm.
I don't know. And being open to knowing that I'm not, and I think this is where I think we go wrong talking about race and sexuality. We come at it like, and even from the left side, you know, when we say that's the wrong term, don't use colored, don't use this,
Oh,
don't
I
use gay,
know.
or don't, because
Well,
again, if you're talking to a farm boy in Minnesota who's never left their town, how are they
yeah.
going to know? And how do they know what the term is? But the fact that they're inquisitive, right? The fact that they're asking or they're trying to talk about it, I just don't think we should, you know, never knock them down for that. Like, it is a learning process. The fact that they're even trying to talk about it is
Well,
sometimes just the act itself that is pretty empowering. So,
yes,
anyway,
I love that the increasing like transparency and creating those safe places to have. That's why I want to do a podcast because I was like, I used this quote I talked about the other day too. That I don't just speak with women because I want women to be more powerful than men. No, I speak with women because I want women to become more strong.
absolutely.
And it's not a competition. I'm saying out loud. I don't think men should be in women's sports. I'm just not that. Just genetically, there's so many things wrong with that, and it's just not even going down the rabbit hole. But the transparent ability to have the conversations, and that's what I like. Like moving
But
past this.
Amy, isn't it? Is it more about? And I'm not. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I always like to frame that conversation about women and men and women's sports and things more about the abilities that they're given. And you started the podcast with this and saying that we all start in different places. And
Yes.
I think it's about recognizing that they start in a different place that brings disadvantage to the women that
Mhm.
are going. So, you know what I mean? It doesn't even
Yeah.
have to be about some drag queen that's running. I don't know. I mean, it really is about ability and the fact that there's an equity there. And I don't know enough, and I don't know enough scientific data to tell me that there's no disadvantage to having them compete together. So I always go off of it's the abilities and where they start. So yeah. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
You said coaching, getting athletes ready to be at the Olympic level. I do know the difference between
Yeah,
genetics and hard work. And there are certain things that, I'm not going to get on the line with a bunch of linebackers, in the Mizzou
right.
football team or something like that. My genetic
Your
makeup is,
body's just made different, and so
yes, and they're not going to be having babies. It's not possible through their bodies, right? We're
right.
gifted these beautiful, different, unique gifts and talents. And there are some things that we've created to help each other shine. In the Paralympics, there's certain criteria to help them, in their beautiful, unique bodies. Yet I think that we do a disservice when, you're not reaching your potential. So you go down, you go in a different class. That's not okay either.
Right.
Right. So but I like that you always create a safe platform, and I'm always interested in what informs the decision making. Like you said, just the education or the opportunities. Like, I've traveled the world, and when I come home and be like, I ate crickets in Cambodia, they're like, why would you eat crickets? But it's like, oh, they were so good. But had I never been exposed to crickets,
Right.
because I am not farm girl. I remember the first time coming back to you, but you're so spot on. Like, my first African-American friend, Octavia, she's like, I'm going to get a perm. And she came back and her hair was straight. And I was like, when we get a perm, our hair is curly.
Yes.
So
But just
it's
being able
those,
to ask that question, like, I don't
yes.
know,
And I love that we get, but this cancer culture, like, I like when you said when we go extreme left and we go extreme right, and we put our ears closed instead of going with the curiosity of, show me a new lamb from Missouri. Show me, right? Show me
right,
a new, I don't want just your words, but show me why. And
right.
that's what I love what you do, because I get to witness you in Cape Coral. I get to see your dedication. I get to see the transformation. But when you're coming back to that, okay, so you got the same-sex marriage passed, and then coming back
I didn't
also
pass
to
it. I just supported it. So
supported it. You supported it. And then to take those voices of Cape Coral residents and, that you heard and helped get their needs addressed. Like, how do you do that with, like, what are your negotiation or your communication styles that you've been blessed to get polished in your different managerial positions or different marketing positions when you're creating the story? Like, what are some, just keeping
I,
it
I
fair.
will. This is honestly, being strong is one thing. What helped me the most out of this whole campaign was at a debate. I walk up to, they called her the Grand Dame of the Republican Party in Cape Coral. That was at that first debate. And I walked up to her and I shook her hand. I said, I've heard so much about you. I just wanted to say hello and introduce myself. Her name was Michelle Doherty. When I say Grand Dame, she was married to she was a Rockette dancer in her past.
Yeah.
She was with the Rat Pack. She was, her husband was friends with Frank Sinatra. She was the first woman who was a hospital administrator, in the US. Just an amazing woman. Very, 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 very Republican. And I just remember her looking at me and going, "You'll never win with that hair." And she just walked away. And I was like, okay, you know what? Whatever. And so I just kept going. And eventually she ended up being my mentor and not
Aw.
only just a mother figure to me. And she gave me a lot of courage and comfort. I mean, she died at 97. She died, what, 3, 4 years ago. And
Yeah.
just a powerful woman. So mentors are so important. Being able to talk to somebody that, she would drag me to these, sometimes drag me to the Republican. You're going to, I'm getting an award, so you're going to go to the Republican women's dinner tonight, and I'm like, okay. I would have never been invited ever before, but she would just walk me in, sit me down, and be like, and there she is. You're gonna like
No,
talk.
it's so beautiful. Talk about, that's a real woman, though,
Yeah.
right? It's like, of bringing in different religions too. The fear of it's so interesting to me because we're all taught the same thing, or no religion. Love is the religion, right? And
Right.
what you choose to believe among the different denominations is just the little, nuances and challenges, but really at the core of it isn't all love one another, listen to one
Right.
another. And
Yes.
so are we wearing the labels more than the authenticity of getting to know? Do the labels get in the way of the joy in knowing the person?
Right. Right. And she just literally, that was what helped the most. I mean,
Oh, so she was your mentor. I love that. I always ask, like,
and she's
at
my
the end.
mentor, and she is my mentor in heaven right now, I'm telling you
Yes,
that. She's gonna be here to kinda take me through this next campaign, I know that. But at the same time, understanding she gave me a gift because now I understand what it means to mentor others. I know how to do that in a healthy way. So, when we share that of ourselves, when we share
yes.
that piece to the women in our circles or the women that are younger, or the women, that is a that is truly a gift that we're giving them because just like when I was vice president of marketing, and this was in the early or mid 90s, I didn't have any role models.
Mhm.
I would always be told, you're too brash, you're too mouthy, you're too this, you're too that. And I'm like, and so when I tried to pretend like I was a man, I came across very masculine and very bossy, and so it put me on shaky ground. I didn't know, who I was. And so having those, we had to kind of just feel our way through to go, okay, that didn't work. Let's try again. Oh, that took me back 2 years of my career. Let's keep going. But being able to talk to and help mentor women that are younger than us or that are coming through the same, paths that we're doing,
Mhm.
we give them
Mhm.
permission and we give them strength in knowing this, okay, it's tried and true. She's already tried that. You know what I mean? And this is how she does it. So I will try that too. And we all do that, mirror people without realizing it. But
Mhm.
it gives permission, and that was probably one of the biggest things I had was lots of mentors, lots. I had on the Democratic side, I had another lady named Alex. She was a past council member, and she was that to me on the other side. Much
Mm,
different
yeah.
than Michelle, but equally smart, equally talented, equally all of those things, equally strong. And so both of those women together, I just felt like I kind of had the trifecta
Mm,
of, support. Here we go. We're going forward. So that was one of the biggest things for me was mentoring, mentors for me.
yeah.
Um, and then I don't know what was the other question on that because I got off
Well,
on a
so,
tangent.
well, you're perfect. So you were just saying there were two things, so I think mentors and then like what you were most proud of or what you experienced,
Oh, yeah,
that were important. And I usually I even ask that question at the end. So it's pretty cool that you're jumping ahead of that because I usually ask like who was one of your, best female mentors because none of us got here alone. And I
right.
love that you had two and it didn't matter. Like look at that, like the grand dame of the Republican Party, right? She's like taking this amazing Democrat under her wing and she's like, it doesn't matter, right? It's your
Yeah,
hair.
and Michelle's son was gay. I
Yeah.
actually officiated their wedding, which was an
Oh.
amazing thing for me. But she would show up, and her party was very much anti anything, homosexuality or whatever. But with her son and having that experience, whenever we would pass some kind of ordinance or something that would support same sex of any kind, or just being acceptance, or not, we passed something to not let people so that businesses couldn't just kick people out based on their sexual orientation or whatever. She would come with a big red scarf wrapped around her neck, and she'd be standing at the podium saying, I am a Republican and I support this. So, again, the reverse side of that is we can provide cover to people, other women who are trying to stand up, who are trying to be in their fullest potential. We provide that cover so many times without, just by being present, by showing up for them, by telling our stories. So she was that for me in a lot of ways. So
Yeah, no, I love that. And like I know that sometimes like it's painful to go back, right? And we like to close the chapters of the pain. And that means sometimes that we haven't totally I know like when I had my practice, there was still some healing there because when you're getting through it, right? The absolute you can talk without the emotion and you can talk. So it's interesting how we need mentors and we need to be able to self-reflect when in our leadership so
Yes.
that the haters don't trigger us. Because since leaving the office, you've continued, you serve the community through various initiatives, right?
Mhm.
And so can you just talk a little bit about like your current role? Because now you're in Michigan, and
I
I'll
am.
a little bit because you're a regional asset manager. You did that too,
I am.
and oh,
Mhm.
that's great. And I so she is that. Yes, she still is. I didn't
Yeah,
know if
I
you were.
am that. So, and that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy too because and I first before I get into that, I wanna say, I think the biggest lesson I learned in that whole, without getting into all the sordid stuff that happened to me, while in office,
Now to talk
um
about that, even though now, but these things built you to what you could do
yeah,
now. And to interrupt you, but I do because the title of your book is
yeah.
so powerful. Those things really happened, and I want to talk about that.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to share them because I have gone through that process, but I also wanna say, one of the things I did initially when after coming out of it, or being right out of it was I thought I should be healing faster. I thought it, this is taking too long. And I just beat myself up over and over and over and
Mm.
over with negative self-talk. Marnie, this is nothing. You've come, just get out of it, snap out of it. Right. And what I have learned is, there is no, there is no definition of how long it takes to heal or how long it takes to move to that next level. And I've learned to give myself grace that
Yeah.
that was the perfect time, whatever it gave me, which was 7 years. 7 years it took to heal that wound where I
Yeah,
can.
talk about it though, because people don't know what that is.
Mhm.
And if you could put a name to it, because it was huge. And I
Yeah,
don't even think people here, in Cape Coral, they didn't, unless they read your book, because you did so much good. And that's one thing that was so frustrating knowing you and all the good things you did, hearing people slam you without. And I hate that in politics. I wish we could get rid of that. Haters
good
don't
luck.
take action.
You're welcome. You're going to see a lot more of it.
Well, that's what I want to heal. Like, okay, as we move forward, this next generation, that we gotta stop the.
Mhm.
We can collaborate, we can differ, and we can open up communication.
Yeah,
And but coming back, name what it is, because that's another thing we've got to break as women, right? We've
right.
got to break the stigmas. We've got to think that it's somehow someone that's not intelligent or da 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 da. No, you're an intelligent, successful woman, and you suffered at the hands of
Right.
someone who's
I mean,
supposed to love.
it it started with little it it just started with the how do I what's the best word to use that? Diminishing me, when I would walk into the
The
room,
derogatory stuff. Yeah.
or not even it was not outright, it would be where they would
Really.
just snub me, like, they'd shake hands with the men candidates and not mine.
Mm.
They would,
Oh.
put me less the one of the debates that we had, everybody told me not to go to, it was a Republican debate uh, museum, the military museum, and they're like, "Don't go do this. It's a setup." And it could have been. Um, I kind of just went in saying, "Well, I'm going to go talk to people who disagree with me, and I may win two people over. I don't know. We'll see."
That's
When I
amazing.
got,
Wait, stop right there. How did you have, like, because this is the part that I think is such a mentoring moment. Where does the courage come from? What is the mindset that you adapt to face your fears and to face when everybody else is telling you not to and your gut's telling you to? Like, how do you know when it's really a warning for people and you should listen, or it's really, people's fears being projected? How do you use, where's your little like
yeah,
intuitive monitor that you can
I
share with?
yeah, no, I think it's easy to be in your head. It's really easy. It's not as easy to listen to your heart,
Mm.
and that whole campaign tried to literally listen to my heart. I had just come out before I ran, we're going to go back there. I had married a man I had met online. Um, he ended up being a romance scammer. And this isn't even in the book because it was just one of those things. It was such a short period of time, that
It's
it just,
huge. It's
yeah,
huge. impactful, and I love that you're sharing. Thank you for sharing that. This
Yeah.
is
No,
you know,
it is what it is. It was my second marriage, and it was lasted, the day we got married, and I remember the night before crying and calling a friend going, "I don't think this is right. I don't think this is right. This is not it. This is not it." And that's why I'm telling you about this, because this is how I learned to listen to this, because I'm like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, and they're like, you're just nervous." So I married him, and that night I got an email from an anonymous woman saying, "Go look at Plenty of Fish. Your man is on there with a profile." So I did. There he is. So me being who I am, living in the other room, he's in the other room, I created a profile, put on a fake face. He hit it like, absolutely,
wow.
and, I set up a date, and the next day I showed up, and it was his wife. Um, I moved out that next night, and then it took me 21 days to get a judge to hear it, and so I was divorced within, like, 2 months. So, um and luckily, I don't know why he chose me. He didn't take anything from me. He didn't get anything from me. He had
That
taken a
was
lot.
so
He
brilliant.
wiped out other women's life, like, entire accounts, and he didn't do mine. So I don't know
Do
what
we
that was.
is it in the book? So all women beware?
He's married now, and I just let that go. He didn't come out during my campaign, and he didn't. Had he'd be in the book. He'd be in the book. But it's one of those things. I did make posters with his face on it and go stick it on all people's mailboxes in the area that said
Yeah.
romance scammer and whatever. But it
Yes.
was a dark time. That was an ugly time, and so um,
So you attracted him just because you were in a place in your life where you didn't feel so
yeah,
good about yourself?
I had just come out of being sexually abused. Well, assaulted in
Mhm.
Minnesota with a client of mine, an agent that I knew and respected, and I lost my purpose there for a while. Lost my purpose. Didn't want to travel. I was afraid to go to hotels. Afraid to, and I'd been traveling for 10 years, on my own. Have no problem sitting in a bar, talking up whatever, and it just. Yeah, he kind of provided something in me that was able to safety that I thought I didn't have, and he was a narcissist that just preyed on women in those positions. So, um, it is what it is. I'm not ashamed of
Yeah.
it. I'm not
Oh,
anything of it.
oh,
It's just
great.
it is.
Okay, well, yeah, I was okay, why did it happen for you, right? Like, what were the nuggets that you gleaned that you can share? Like, so women, like, pay attention, coming out of a tragedy or coming from a horrible event, like you were sexually assaulted, then you attracted this guy. So you
Yeah,
and I like where you said earlier, you need to give yourself time to heal without judging the length of time that it's
right,
taking. Because,
right.
like, how do you know, Marty? How do you know when you're healed?
Yeah, there
Right?
was many times I thought it was, and I would
Yeah.
start out again, and I would try to go way too hard into something again, full force, only to be kicked again or feel kicked again, and be like, "Oh, did not heal that piece, didn't see that one coming," and a lot of it. So to back up a little bit, so while I was in office, I met, it was amazing. I was single, and so it was amazing how many married men like to hit, I
Mm.
don't know what it is. And I look at that now too as saying, even for me, it was a place for me to be unemotionally available, like to, not that it was right, not that anything of that. But it's a self respect thing that I needed to get back to myself. Um, but it was amazing how many men, single and professional, that I met. And I happened to meet Brian Rist, who is the owner of StormSmart, one of the biggest, largest companies in our county.
Yeah.
Wonderful man. Um, but he hired me as a consultant after I started running. And I'll just tell you this story. It was really cute because I ended up, when I went to meet with he was like the staunch Republican, part of the RNC, part of the, I'm talking inner Republican. And I go to meet with him at his office, and he starts telling me, he takes me around to show me his manufacturing, and I said, facility. And I started just asking questions like consultants do, right? Like, how do you
Mhm.
manage your waste? I mean, these people are sewing. I see all this stuff thrown. Like, how do you manage? Come to find out, he had no processes in place to manage waste or know how much something actually cost, that he was making. And I'm like, how can you maximize profits if you don't have,
Mhm.
if you don't know your waste? So it ended up where he was, I think, more intrigued with my brain. I know that for sure because we sat down and he's like, I might need to have you come in and do some consulting for me. And
Okay.
and he just kind of leans back in his chair and he looks at me and he says, I can't believe I'm about to do this. And I said, what? And he goes, I am gonna vote for a Democrat, and I am gonna support a Democrat for the first time in my life, and I just remember laughing and being, "It won't be your last, and it won't be the worst decision you've ever made." So, he brought me in as a consultant,
Yeah.
and, he was going through a rough time with his wife. I didn't know that at the time, and he ended up, splitting from her, and, um, I don't know, about, 6 months later, we started dating. Meanwhile, I'd met a firefighter who was on my campaign and single guy who seemed to have it all together, firefighter, vice president of the union, all kinds of things. God, just a very strong 27 years lieutenant in the department. And we became close friends. And before I dated Brian, I'd gone out with Kenny a couple times and then he just kind of disappeared, even though he'd show up to my campaigns, but he wouldn't call or text or whatever. And I'm like, whatever, he's not interested. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Like, I start dating Brian. I move in with Brian. And then from then on out, it was just this. I tried to hide it, because it was he was 16 years older. Not that that ever makes a difference. He was perfectly matched as far as intelligence and all of that with me. And had charisma and everything else. But he certainly, um, I don't know. He gave me he got me funding. He got me whatever. But he also taught me a lot about myself. He taught me, he was a Republican. I'm a Democrat. How we had so many debates in our living room on just various, because Hillary Clinton was running then. And they
Oh
were
yeah.
like, oh God, I hate her. And I'm like, let's talk about this and just interesting things. But turns out
Love has been love was so it came in many different
it did.
forms.
It
The
did.
molding of you.
Yeah, and it just, happened. So I'm dating back and forth and going, I'm Brian and I break up and I'd go hang out with Kenny. Kenny and I'd break up and I'd go hang out with Brian. And I think now looking back at it, they were getting something out of it too. They were getting their, I'm with the mayor, I'm whatever. And I look at that now and go, okay, so I'm not so hard on myself. It was not so much of overlap if it was just I was moving so fast I didn't stop to say what's going on here, what's going on here. But needless to say, it gets out into the public, right? That and I'll be honest, even when I dated, I took, so I went to one event. I'm single. I go to one event, I take a date. We date, right? It's not a big
Yeah.
deal to take someone here and
Yeah.
take another one here. Well, as soon as I took somebody else to the next function, then I'm a whore. Now I'm, this. I'm a slut. I'm this. Women
Mhm.
hold on to your husbands, whatever. I don't know. And it just kind of took from there. And I really look at that, and I can look back now and say, wow, what jealousy. Now I can look back and say the women that were the loudest, the projection there, right? Like, they
Yeah.
project. People project when they're in a place of misery or whatever. They'll try to project it onto you. And so this happened. Um
How
the
would you Yeah, because as you're dating different people, I see that a lot. I mean, if a man did that, would it be a big deal? Like you see this all the time. But
Not
if
at
a
all.
woman is trying to figure out if this person fits, sometimes the best way to test them is bring them out into public. See, like I want to go to dinner, see how they treat the wait staff,
Right?
see how they are they
Or how
gentlemen to everyone.
politics is me. So how are they with a group of people? How are
Yeah.
they talking when are they kind to people when they're in public? I don't know. All of those things matter. Um, and that wasn't the only thing going on. We had, um, just in general, I only won by 121 votes. So I used to laugh because people everywhere after I won, everywhere I'd go, they'd say, I voted for you, I voted for you, I voted for you. And I'm like, wow, it's awesome. Somehow I've never met anyone that's not voted for me. It's just amazing that I won by 121 votes. But, you know,
Yeah.
knowing the
Yeah.
truth. So that kind of led into right away, the very first day after I won the election, the incumbent mayor filed a lawsuit for a recount. That went on for a year. He lost. Then there was a appeal on the recount. And between that was a potential, someone trying to recall me, get enough people to recall me. And then there was petitions to the governor to remove me. That didn't work. So then they became ethics review, ethics things because I'm dating Brian, who's a wealthy man, and the best part of Brian was, I said, we can date, but I don't ever want to see you brought before me uh, for a vote. Like, don't bring anything in front of me for a vote because I don't ever want to have to compromise or recuse myself or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just don't.
Yeah.
He said,
I saw it. Yeah. Wow. That's
and
interesting. I
he's like,
never had that
He's like,
position.
"I
Yeah.
will never, while we're dating, bring anything before you for a vote." And I said, "All right, then I can do this, right?" So then it became, we take my birthday was in February. He buys me this beautiful ring, and that eventually got out, and that became, them. That's where they filed the ethics complaints and things about all of this. So it just kept hitting and hitting and hitting. Um, until Brian and I broke up. I ended up with Kenny. Um, I'm pretty sure Kenny was the love of my life. I'm pretty sure I I I say this a lot now. At the time the anger I had towards what he did to me, and I'll explain that in a minute. Now I see it as, I think, just as you said, we're all placed here at a right time, at the right place to do what we're supposed to do here. And I truly believe that had I stayed on that trajectory of where I was headed, I would have re-ran for mayor. I would have won. I would have done not as my life would have not been the same, right? It would have stayed comfortable. It would have stayed easy. And Kenny, I think, had to have had some soul agreement where he's like, when you decide not to do what you need to do, I'm going to be the person to make you do the 180. And there
Yeah.
he is. So
Have you read the book Radical Forgiveness?
yes, I have.
Right? And it says in there, and I like that, and I truly can adopt this kind of philosophy that I believe like we make soul agreements possibly when we come down, and it's exactly what you said. If you're on your path of purpose and you decide to not show up and take back the universe and God and everybody, somebody's gonna show up and be the asshole that push I said asshole.
They are.
If some the stinker to show up and then move you forward or the other way around, and still
You are
bless
gonna go where you need to go. You are gonna go.
everyone in your life is such a great teacher and such a great, beautiful player in revealing what your spirit needs to grow.
Right, right. And so, nobody told me he had abused his ex-wife. Here
Mm.
I knew all the firefighters. I knew the fire chief very well. He was his best friend, and no
That's
one
huge.
told. Yeah, no
That's
one.
huge. This happens so often. I just had an interview, another podcast guest, and she said his friends watched her, knew that he had a history of beating up people,
Yeah,
wouldn't say anything. Man, when are
word.
you going to step up? And,
Right.
and not, there are some men, but it's not enough. They
I
don't hold.
There was not any of them, and I had a
Oh,
ton that knew. The entire department knew. After we broke up, I heard, well, he burnt she burned her wedding dress on the front lawn, and I'm like, that's crazy, right? It's like, had I known that
yeah,
information, I may not have dated him. Like, it would have been
yes.
really good information to know at the time, but,
That's the
um,
reason I like those websites where it's like, that's why I was like, if you put the pictures up, girls need to let know he cheated. I faked it. I went on the website and made a fake profile. I got beat, and here's the previous girlfriend that was beat. Just saying,
right,
here's your warning risk on this man.
right.
And it's not to hate him. It's just to say, educate yourself on what you're getting into. You can make the choice to go,
And
be the next.
you may think you'll change him, and if you do, that's great. That's your you go there, but I would have liked the choice. I would have liked to have
Yeah,
had the choice. And
yes,
so I
yeah.
didn't. I didn't have that choice. And even the city manager knew all this, and that came out later, reading the FDL, like the Florida Department of Law Enforcement's final investigation and their internal investigation from the city of Cape Coral. breaks my heart because it's just like, come on, guys,
And
I could have been killed. You didn't even step up. Like none of you stepped up. All of you guys took bro code over, my safety.
And
um,
that is something that, like, I don't know how to advocate for any greater than that. There has to be a standard for bro code that says, hey, we don't hurt another
right.
person. And if
Well,
we
I'll tell you
know
where
about
that came
it, we
from.
all hold you responsible. And, like, that
I will
can't
tell
be okay.
you, my son has been taught that. My son
Yeah.
knows, you don't
Yeah.
stand up for that. My son knows what consent means. My son knows all of those things now. So I have
Yeah.
taught him that. Like he's witnessed it, he's seen it. My daughter knows it. They both, are strong individuals, but my son would never stand by and let somebody just have that happen to him. He's seen the effects of it, but he's also come out of it with me. So but yeah, so it all
That
culminated.
will help you, like, imagine making the decisions to fight for women even more,
Mhm.
right? That's
Yeah,
gotta make you feel proud. Then again, applying and what you're doing going forward, helping women, with these, I don't know, some kind of systems will come up with to let them know, hey, these guys may not have been gone all the way to trial because you don't, our judicial system
uh,
is so we don't even need to talk. That's a whole nother like
is a
weeks
whole
worth of.
nother subject.
We can have our own, right? We can have the one that's
Right,
online somehow. We need to make a, these are predators that weren't prosecuted, just warning, and
right,
these were guys that here's what happened. Somehow we have to have women protecting women, right? Uplifting
right.
each other. And
Well,
they're
and
just,
there is do it for any woman, and so that everybody, the listeners know, um, he ended up beating me at a conference in Miami, so almost taking my life, strangled. Uh, he
oh,
ended up pleading guilty to third degree felony of battery and by strangulation. So, Florida has a point system, so they gave him because he was a public servant as a fire lieutenant for 27 years. They gave him points, so he missed jail by like 4 points. He got 1 year of house arrest with a tether on his leg and 3 years of probation, I guess. Not
wait.
anywhere near.
He almost killed you.
Yeah, in front of
And
my kids, in front of my children. Yeah, and I have video with a video. I had a video, Amy. I had
wow.
rolled. I don't know why, but
And still didn't go. See, that just shows you.
the
Mm.
judge thanked him for his service before he gave him his in front of my children, and
Wow.
we'd just done our victim statements, and he thanked him for his 27 years of service before he gave him his sentence. And it
Mommy,
just
what that judge?
I don't even know his I can't, you know what? I think I
Laughed
blocked
at her. So tragic. Yeah, and you just like disbelief. I have had a disbelief moment there too before.
yeah,
Wow.
And so
Wow.
and so he now, just so everyone knows, his guns were taken from him. I have a permanent restraining order. My children have permanent restraining orders. They don't give those. So the fact that we have one is amazing, except that it does nothing. I was told to carry it with me at all times because from county to county to county. So here's where our laws are really messed up. And we could go down along, and I won't take you down that rabbit hole, but
Good to
um,
educate because
it is important because
yeah.
what we find is so the laws are set up that there's shall versus may. Shall means you must, may
Okay.
means you could, don't have to. You should, right? So our system is set up in the counties to may submit to the FBI's crime database. It's not a shall. So
No
it's based
way.
on resources. So no states, no counties report restraining orders up to the FBI crime database. Whereas we all know the crime database from the FBI is where they do background check or where they search when they go get a gun.
Mhm.
That goes through the FBI crime database. So there is no record of anyone having restraining orders. So these men can, or I mean, the women that are couldn't can go in, get a gun, even though they have a restraining order
And
against.
almost killed someone.
Yep, with nothing being reported up. So it's useless. It's a
Wow.
really a useless. It's useless, right? So it's a it was a very false sense of, here, you won. I'm like, what did I win? What did I win?
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
those are the things is what keeps me in politics. Those things
Yes.
are the
Yeah.
things that, if we all, if we, even if it's one thing that you care about, even if it's one
Mhm.
topic that, gun violence, or it could be as something so just about education. Um, those that are feeling called to step up and change that process, it's worth it to go into politics to change something so that you affect so many other people's lives.
Oh,
And
really?
that is what has always drawn me back to politics, is that knowing that, I'm affecting people I don't even know at a level that they don't even know they need the assistance on, right? Because this is for
Yeah,
women
just learning.
who never
Yeah.
had it. Yeah.
Like, what good is a restraining order? And the amount, like, so that's, again, let me come back to that, because here's someone almost kills you in front of your kids, right?
Mhm.
And you don't stop, and you just keep going. Like, what is that in you that, like, how do we, I want to, like, take some of that, sprinkle it across, like, how do we keep that stick to itiveness, that heart to serve, to do the right thing, in spite of the haters, in spite of the abusers, in spite of the threatening life, oh, what you've been through, right? The slander,
Yeah.
the everything they tried to take you down. Why? Just because, like, you were
I
trying
had
to
the
do
courage to stand up, right, and because
that.
I dated men, I mean, that's
It was
but
reversed.
honestly, I mean, there's reflecting back on that, he did take me to my knees. That situation took me to my knees. That took me, I almost took my life, I mean, I know what it feels like to be so low and so, hating myself, hating who I am, and feeling like, I'm just not worthy, I'm not in a place of where I even respect myself, and I have to say self-love, just being able to say, all right, meeting myself where I was at that time, and being able to give myself grace to say, "You know what? You're pretty low. Like, maybe you should just go outside." Like today, I started a gratitude journal. That was one of the biggest things I did. So, and there were days that I couldn't find things to write that I got, you know what I mean? Like what I was grateful for. So I have a book where I wrote, I'm grateful that I woke up today. I'm grateful for my dog. I'm grateful that the sun came out. I'm grateful I was able to walk today, because
It's those
because
little things that
it
are
was
huge, and that's all you
I
can
just
muster up.
there was nothing else I could, nothing else. I would sometimes sit there for,
Wow.
10, 15 minutes to just go, there's gotta be something I'm grateful for, right? Oh, I ate today. Ooh, I had some food.
Mm.
You know what? Food. I was able to buy some food.
Yeah.
And just giving myself the compassion of saying that's hard, and tomorrow's another day, we'll wake up tomorrow and just and so I would purposely write in my journal next day, tomorrow's going to be better. Tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow will always be better. So I wake up in the morning and I'd start, you know what I mean? It was just a lot
I
of
love that. Tomorrow's going to be better.
and just that
Tomorrow.
perspective of knowing today I can choose. I get to choose, right? I get to go. And if today sucks, guess what? It resets. I get
Tomorrow's gonna be better.
I get another day.
Oh, that's a great philosophy, though, because then
It
slowly you're
saved my
repro.
life.
Mhm. Because I think, like, oh, what that's really good. That almost ties into, like, my next question I had for you, like, your leadership philosophy. Because when you're leading all these people, and you're watching, because they're coming from two different ends, and you've got to merge them together to get a job done, and put their opinions, put their beliefs sometimes aside, and focus on the mission. Like, how do you yeah, how do you describe what you do to get that done?
Um, Very similar, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think the point of just you said it perfectly earlier, curiosity, just having the courage to be curious and ask questions. And I've learned so many times that I don't always have all the information that I've just set,
Mhm.
I'm setting my way on this way, and shoot, I didn't even know that there was another story that if someone had shared with me, wow, that
Yeah.
changes everything, right? That changes how my whole changes everything. And
Go would
yeah,
go
and
or yes,
I think by doing that in leadership, I think by I have over I run 7 malls. So
that's
altogether I
amazing.
have about 300 employees that are under me, and um I do that daily. You know what I mean? Like, uh,
Yes,
one, I always respect everybody's opinion, and two, my door is always open. And that's kind of cliche. I know we always say that. There's always boundaries. I have definitely have office hours, but
yeah,
I want people to know that, they don't their opinion matters. And if it ever gets to the point, I train and build and mentor my team from the ground up. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Because you
yeah,
need I need that next level manager to be able to manage down, and I need the next one to manage down. And then I also need them to understand it's managing up. So manage
yeah,
my expectations. I manage my boss's expectations. And how do you do that? So I always do that, and I always try to make sure, even with my constituents, let me give me the information. I love stakeholder groups. I love it when in business, and I love it in
yes, yes,
politics, especially when I had people. For example, there was a group that hated manufactured homes in Cape Coral, didn't want manufactured homes, and it was a big deal. They started a whole Facebook group. It was like 10,000 people strong, of all these people like hating manufactured homes. I don't even and there's such a difference between a mobile home and a manufactured home. And they wanted us to limit and do these architectural standards so that no one could ever build a modular home or anything like that in our city. And so the first thing I did was, they're all debating, and I'm like, you know what, city manager, just create a stakeholder group. There needs to be someone from that's a representative from this group, right? This big
yeah,
Facebook group that's preferably the loudest that's on the group, most opinionated. Bring in builders, bring in people who realtors, bring in, your average citizen, bring in all these groups. And what it ended up, they ended up saying, well, crap, we can't really limit that, because then we limit the high end homes too. Because if you put these standards in, we're going to get a cookie cutter, and I'm like, well, it solved itself. It's all good. So I
yeah,
didn't have to mess with it, but they solved it, right? If you put them all in the room,
yeah.
they're gonna hash it out. So
Yeah, that's so smart. And don't you like coming back now? That's why when I look at our politicians and, some going back, they voted one way and then they changed their opinion and vote. And I'm, well, you know, haven't you ever changed your opinion once you got more data provided? Maybe you thought you had all the data. So how can we slam them that they changed their opinion? Because, we do grow, we do change, we do get
yeah,
more informed, we do get more educated. And I don't want someone to hold me where I am now and
right.
compare it where I was when I was 20. I was such a judgmental little brat, thought, like, well, you're that because you choose to be that. Well, really, Amy, come on. Whoa. And I think what a brat I was, right? Because I had such a, like you were saying earlier, limited view. And then as our politicians, even if they're career politicians, it's like, well, they have the same experiences. They're up there. Some of them are ego driven, some of them are service driven. And it's okay. It's what makes the world, we have our checks and balances. And as you're moving,
They're still an instrument. They will be used however we use them. So, ego or no ego. They're our
yes,
instrument. So,
and
how
it
you
shows.
appeal to that, I always laugh when I go to meet, with the politicians in Washington, D.C., Marco Rubio and all them. I'd always laugh and be like, I got to meet them where they're at too. And so if that's I am just so honored to meet you. I am so grateful for what you're doing. Thank you for stepping up. Like, all right, I
True.
can do that because that's what they need and then I need to do something for me, right? So it is a kind of a give and take, but I do think we could do politicians specifically could do a better job explaining why they've changed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it would help
Yeah.
bring along more people. I think
Mhm.
know what that looks like because there's so much media inundated,
That's what I was saying. Like, where's the platform? Maybe we need to create a new platform,
right?
Marty. Where it's like I like the truth, and it's like, okay, why did you vote this way? What informed you to
Right,
change? Can you tell us how you've evolved?
right.
And not we need more kindness and collaboration instead of labels and judgment. And when you're in that, like, how do you inspire others to come to that? Like you said, they talk and you do the stakeholders groups, but how would you, I like what you said earlier about helping, if a woman, like, I love the moms taking action to help their kids, but then the women that have never had kids finding the solution, particularly women, when they know. Do you think it's gotten better? Sorry, I'm jumping all over because I have so many questions, but do you think it's gotten better for women now? It's like, it's so hard for me to believe that as far as we've come, there's still men that are like, I'm not going to shake your hand. Because I had a guy when I sold cars, I wanted to sell cars as a kid, and he's like, women have no business selling cars. And I thought,
Because
wow,
you don't know
no one,
anything about them. Yeah.
yeah, no one ever. He directly said that. I'll never forget my little town of Waterloo, Lindenbush Chevrolet. And I was like, okay, well, what's the most number of cars you've sold, Bill, in a month? 16. And I'm like, or no, 14. And I've been here 30 years. And I'm like, okay, now I got a goal. And in 3 months, I had 16 cars, and then I could quit selling cars. But just that, like, I can't imagine. I think that our goal, and what I love about you and what you've dedicated your life to, is bringing out the best in the people that you work with.
Yeah.
Like, even on your website, I thought it was cute. You're like, life coach, politician, former mayor, and now, candidate for governor. And what better candidate than you, because you've been through every stage, right? So from the grassroots PTO, what it means to take care of our schools. You've been from the mayor of a city. You're not skipping things. You've worked your way up through the truth, and you're down there in the trenches, and now you're being trained, as you're managing 300 people. And so you're going to be, you ever think about president? Let's do the governor first.
Yes, my husband says that all the time. He's like, we're going to be, I'm going to be the first gentleman there too. So whatever.
There you go. Like, I'm really looking forward to, there are some extreme views, and we've got to come back to balance a little bit. We've got to
Really
come
do.
back to family. We've got to come back to kindness. We've got to come back to encouraging and being proud in America. Like, when I hear people say, I'm leaving this country, I'm like, no, again, like I said before, change it. Be
Well,
the change.
interesting you said that, because I have a lot of people, because I'm very fiscally conservative. So I am a Republican, by all views on that.
Yeah.
Pretty dang Republican as far as that mindset.
Yeah.
I'm just socially compassionate. I'm socially empathetic. I try to like understand where they're coming from. I believe in a lot of those things that help people, that there is I just acknowledge inequity, right? There are natural starting places that people are not, that they don't are not benefiting from starting the same place that I did, and
Yeah. Yeah.
understanding the privilege in that. And that's not a privilege is not a bad word. It's just, you just acknowledge though that there are others that don't have it, right? So
Yeah.
um and so I even forgot where I was going with that. I
No, you're
started-
just, yes, because, like, bringing us back together. It's like, not the labels and that. It's like, what our views are, and how do we get back to family values? How do we get back? So you're saying, I think you're conservative in the approach that common sense. Like,
right.
let's be responsible with our money. If we borrow money, let's pay it
Oh,
back.
and yeah, that's what so they always told me, why don't you need to switch your party? Like, everything you
Uh-huh.
talk to me about, you sound Republican. And I said, well, if I left my party and you think my party's crazy now, like, if I'm not here to help balance out the discussion, why would I do that? Like, if everybody leaves, everybody that you think is sane leaves the party, what does that leave us with? We have to have those voices within our own parties that are okay with having discourse, of having those conversations, or being able to
Yeah.
challenge people and say, I don't, how are we gonna pay for that? Or that's a wonderful idea. Is there money?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where are we going with that? And
Well, you
and
have to have,
challenging it.
yeah, I like that. I always think of, like, football games. Like, you have to have two teams to have a game.
You really
Right?
do.
Because if you don't have that competition, you're not gonna bring out the best in each other. How
Right,
boring is that? That's why I'm like, oh, we need two good competitors to see, are our candidates really good?
right. Well, I
That's
will
what
tell you one thing, this election, what we're gonna be going through in the next 105 days,
months. I mean, yeah, days,
I
not months.
have the feeling is going to move us forward more than we will ever know in this lifetime,
Oh,
because, I feel like we we've been it's kind of like at a crescendo right now. It's been building and building and building, and
yes.
we're going to, in the next 105 days, see what everyone's made of. I mean, my friends, my family, my mom, my dad, whoever I go
Yeah.
out wherever with, my coworkers, because how do they react? How are they
Yes.
triggered? And then on
Is a
top of
good
that,
word.
I have resorted that to the fact that, I'm not going to just unfriend people because they are saying these things, because they are triggered. There's some resistance, right? Anytime we have something that we're not comfortable with, there's that resistance. And the first thing we do is
Mhm,
get defensive. The first thing we do is feel fear. You've brought that up. Fear's huge.
mhm.
So we're going to see the best and the worst of people in the next 105 days. Um, I've already in the last 2 days been just so uh, proud. I don't know if proud's the word. I guess the word.
Inspire?
Yeah, inspired by some of the men that are stepping up,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
saying, this is a strong woman. I know this woman, and
Yeah.
she's going to be great, because I being a black woman on top of it, she's going to take the brunt of things that I've never experienced. I mean, down, you know what I mean? They're gonna be guttering her, like, they're gonna be saying things to her that I
Already are.
never. Yeah,
They already are. What's so interesting to me is, let's stop slamming. Let's not slam any of our people. Let's listen to what they have to say because we don't even get to the solutions.
right.
All they do is slam. When Trump
Her
and Biden were,
cackle, her laugh, her this, her that. None of it's
well,
substance. None of it's
President
substance.
too. It was like, well, all they did was slam on golf and slam on stupid stuff.
Right.
And it was like, I don't know who she is. I don't know who he is because we never actually get to sit down and have a conversation with them. When, like that John Mayer song, when they own the information, they can spin it all they want. So we're waiting on the world to change. How are we going to change it? How are we going to get this? And tell us, what is your solution? We can look back at your voting record. We can look back, but can you tell us why you did that at the time? Because who were you 20 years ago? You know?
Right,
So
and those
yeah,
people that can say, "I was wrong with that," or "I made that
love that.
decision then was, wow, based in something else than, now I know X and I believe this." I will tell you, I even running for governor, I've had to really think hard about these. With local politics, I could always just say, I don't have anything to do with that. Abortion, not my, I don't have any. Can my vote make a difference? Can I personally make a difference
Mhm.
as mayor of Cape Coral with abortion, death penalties, all of that? And in the
Yeah.
beginning, I was like, I can't. And it was my way of kind of, I guess, skirting out of having to have those, of know who I
Getting first.
am, and
Yeah.
and then afraid of having the conversation, right? Because I'm like, I don't even know what to ask. And I'm still struggling with those things around
Mhm.
um capital punishment, and those, like, how do I feel about that?
Yeah.
And so I don't know that those topics will, I don't think I'll ever be so solidified in my opinion of those things. Gun violence, the more I learn, the more I understand, wait, it's so much more about mental health. It's so much more about
Yes.
the preventative things. We're focusing on the gun, but what we should be focusing on is the people's in the head, and the what do they need, and what is society lacking, and healthcare, and all of these things that can make difference. But I, as even a candidate, will never. I will never stand up if I don't know something. I have no problem saying, I welcome more information. This is how I am. This is where I'm at now, but I welcome more information.
Yes.
If you have something that changes that, by all means, share it with me. Um, I can tell you, my husband's Republican. He was a two-time Trump voter. He is a 6-year Army veteran. Served in
Congratulations, by
well.
the way.
Pardon me.
Yay, congratulations
Thank
on your
you.
marriage.
I know
Uh,
he's amazing. He
all
is
that
amazing.
you've been through, you got a happy ending, so that's good. And so then you married a Republican. This was so
And I
fun. How
did. My best
yeah,
friend is Republican. If
beautiful.
I win, no, when I win, she will be my chief of staff, and I find that hilarious that I have, um, I seem to surround myself with so many other people that are not of the same mindset of me, but yet we can absolutely, come to the middle and have really great discussions, and where we're not, I don't know. I mean, we just have really good discussions. And
Yeah.
my husband, being a veteran, January 6th freaked him out. He's like, I didn't go to Desert Storm, you know, to like see this right now. And so it changed him to the point
Mhm.
where, he voted straight ticket Democrat last time. And it was just sheer, it wasn't about Republican or Democrat. It was about, I love my country and democracy is more important to me. So everybody has their reasons for why they vote or why they vote the way they do. And I just, if he didn't vote that way, I wouldn't, that's his vote, but at least we have that really great discussion, that really great, he'll,
Yeah,
and I don't mind surrounding myself around, and I think that's important as women that we surround ourselves with people who don't always think like us, so that, we can at least, if anything, hone the skill in how to communicate and how to have discussions and how to compromise and, 80/20 rule, all those lovely things. But anyway,
absolutely. I love that you said that. And in business, like you can tell you have a really great, strong business foundation. Thank goodness. I love, Congress used to be made up of business owners. Now it's all attorneys.
yeah.
And they've
I
lost,
just said that last night, girl. I just said that last night. I'm like,
wow.
I'm not an attorney. You know what?
Thank
Is that gonna
God.
work?
No, no, because you're not just looking on making a law, you're looking at the solution, right? And you're not trying to win something for the sake of winning. You're trying to bring I keep saying it's the solution though. That's where you get in business when you're in negotiation. It's
Yeah,
like we have a mission to do. We've got to bring these people together or the business is tanking.
yeah,
But facts, not feelings, people. Facts, not
right.
feelings.
And in
And
Cape Coral, we had, I had a $550 million budget that I managed, with the city manager then. And now I manage over $300 million in assets and over $30 million in revenue. And
yeah,
yeah, the state now is billions. But again, it
it's
goes
just
back
more
to the
zeros.
basics. Yeah, it just basics
It's
of,
more
how to make it work. And I know, um, I'll tell this one story before, and I hope it won't bore you, but if it is, just take it out. But I was at a Democratic Women's Club meeting, and they were talking about the Fort Myers Beach library and how they had decided, the Fort Myers Beach Council had decided to change the hours from like closing at 9 to closing at 7. And these women were all upset, and they're like, it's going to hurt working class people who don't have access to the internet and blah 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 and this and that. And it gets to me, and they were going around, and it gets to me, and I just said, where's your data on that? And they're like,
Yeah.
what? And I said, I'm not against public library, but we really do need to know who was going to the library from 7 to 9. Maybe we just need a homeless shelter, or maybe we need, to send them to some of the other current resources that we have in our community and county. Florida Works. There's all kinds of programs that they may need to go to. Do we know? And they just stared at me, and I said, well, if you don't know, and I have that extra, if I have that money that you want to spend on that, and it's between a new police officer, right? Adding public safety, or keeping the library open another 2 hours. I'm gonna choose the police officer, because that is, you know what I mean? I know that data. I know what
Yep,
that does.
yep.
So just having those the courage, right? To be able to say,
Informed decisions. Yeah,
mhm.
you need to inform. You're not going to make moves in business the same way. You need the data.
We put a
Oh, I love.
scorecard. Cape Coral, we put a KPI scorecard, the very first scorecard they've ever had. We put
There
in
you go.
place.
Another thing Marnie did.
Right. Checkbook approach. So you could plug in, we created a website at the end of the day that you could plug in your address, and it would tell you the checkbook approach, which is so important because you see millage, whatever, but take into utilities, take into all of these things, like what are you really paying? And
Mhm.
it helps it put it in perspective. So when I'm speaking to people like Bimini Basin and Cape Coral, so proud to see that $110 million project finally take off, because I got my butt kicked for years over that one. And I'm sad I'm not there to, no one's like, hey, Marnie, come down and,
Come
you
on
know,
down and see it. What do you mean?
do the ribbon cutting. No one's doing that. Right. And in fact, Commissioner Kiker, who was, he's passed away now, but when I was doing the project, he's like, Marty, this is a fabulous project. This is fabulous. He's like, but you understand, you're not going to get any credit for this, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you're doing the legwork, but it's going to be years before this, and every politicians after you are going to take credit for this. And I'm like, you know what? It's the right thing to do, so we're going to do it. And sure,
Nice.
he did. There's people
Yeah,
up there going,
yeah.
look at what I did. And I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter because the idea was to move it forward. The idea
It's
was,
the tree.
oh, yeah,
It's the tree that says we should all plant some trees that will never sit under.
my son goes, he's asked me before, hey, mom, do you think you're going to get a building named after you? I'm like, baby, I don't even care if I get a bench. Like, that's not why I did it. So
Well,
who
it
knows?
was your journey, right? Like, because there's so many athletes that never make it to the gold medal, but they train their whole life to get there. But it's what you learned on your journey
Right.
that is the medal, right?
And
It's what
and
you learn on the way and the
and so
lives you impact.
I'm at this meeting. I'm at this like homeowners, the Northwest Homeowners Association. And no, I wasn't. It was the Cornwell's Homeowners Association. Anyway, we're there by, middle of Cape Coral. And they're like, they're just literally almost screaming at me, Bimini Basin, this and that, whatever. And I'm like, okay, first of all, let me ask. So who doesn't like paying, like, you want to pay more taxes? And they're like, no, we don't want any more taxes. I'm like, okay, so we can all agree, no more taxes. Yes, no new taxes. I'm like, okay. So the project I'm supporting, I'm like, since but you don't support my project. They're like, not at all, not at all. I'm like, okay, so all of you take out your checkbooks. And they're like, what? I'm like, take your checkbooks out and write a check to the city of Cape Coral for $1,500 for this year. They're like, what? I'm like, oh, did you say no new taxes? Because if you don't want new taxes, supporting my projects, what's going to do it? Because my money is other people's money. It's gas
Yeah,
tax, it's sales tax, it's traffic, it's turning a table 3 times at a restaurant instead of 1. You know what I mean? These are the things that
yes,
we're looking at.
yes,
And they all
yes.
just kinda stared at me, and from then on out, I'm like, "All right, let's keep moving." So that group's good. But having those, being able to put it in layman's terms or putting in a point that they, "Oh, I get it. All right, I get it." But those are things that, I don't know. It was
It is so
fun
good.
doing it.
Yeah, this is see, I think a lot of people don't know what's behind the doors of being a politician. Like all the decisions, it's running a major business and having haters come after you, right? Because
It
when
is.
you're running a company, you usually don't have haters for a long time. So you have like the energy on top of it, maybe some employees, but it's taking it to the next level. So I have another question. I believe that the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our questions. So one thing is, what is one question that somebody asked you in your lifetime that made you pause and say, that's a good question?
Couldn't you have sent that to me? I'm just kidding. Put on the spot. My God, there are so many of those, right? Even if it's just, I'll say in general, like just in general, when I'm talking with conviction or I'm so whatever, and don't necessarily have all the information, and someone will just check me with that,
Yeah.
it kind of leaves me, you're just kind of stunned. Um, I don't, I don't really know what question. I mean, there's been many. I don't know.
Yeah. And we can come back to, but I had one lady say, like, someone asked her, who are you doing this for?
Oh,
And
yeah,
ooh, that's powerful, right? And
right.
so, like, just one of those moments where someone said,
I
why
get a
should I
lot
be
of
paying?
why. Why are you doing this?
No, like seriously, like think back to a question where then it made you think like, well, why am I? Or what,
Yeah.
so there's two things. There's like a question that someone asked you and it made you really pause and be like, great question. And it shifted your life perspective.
Hmm.
And then there's another one that's like, what's the question you ask yourself that you would ask of others that brings out the best in you?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
you touched on it earlier when you were like, you were talking about following your heart. I think your question, without being a question, was almost like, is this coming from my heart?
so, yeah, like what's your why? What's your why? And
Mhm. So someone asked you,
I
"What's
had
your
to ask
why?"
myself that before I put
Okay.
myself out there again to run, because you know I don't. I never want it to be of ego. I never want it to be of self promotion. That kind of thing. I had to be sure I could make a difference, or that I could do the things that in my heart, do the things I need to do. Um, I mean, as far as asking me, I've had people just, to be honest with you, ask me. The one big thing that always kind of came up with my father, with other people too, is, who do you think you are? And I say that,
Mm.
and they did say it in a negative way, but it would always trigger me, to a point where I'd be like, well, I'm this and I'm that and I'm all these things, and I'd, get my head going, whatever. And realizing as I got older, I'm like, I am who I am, and that's good enough for me. Like, I don't owe
Who
you
are
an
you
explanation.
not?
Right.
Yeah, who are
I
you
don't owe
not?
you an explanation of why
Yeah.
I'm who I am. And I'm just a badass. There you go. That's
Oh,
it.
yes. I love that confidence, and it's gonna take that. It's gonna take that certainty, that wisdom as you're moving on, because the more you go up, right? The more you are committed to serving larger in a larger capacity and more people, the more you've got to train yourself to be the best in the world.
Right.
When you're playing JV, or you're playing at the state, or you're playing at the national, then you're playing on the world stage right now at the Olympics. You better be mentally prepared. And now you're going to be at the next level, right? You're going
Right.
to serve the whole state of Michigan. And I know as the next governor,
We're gonna be the little
what
USA. Just kidding.
yes, right?
Say,
And
that's the
seriously,
handmaids. Mhm.
yeah, seriously, like what is it that excites you the most about being the next governor?
I just know spirit has a purpose. And I say spirit, God, it's the same for me. I know the purpose I have. Oh, let me rephrase that. I don't always know the purpose I have. I have this niggle. I have this little in my heart that knows that something big is coming, and that I know we are going to need leaders who are able to stand on their own, and who have been battle
Mhm,
tested, and
mhm.
who are not going to crumble under pressure, who are not going to be afraid that the gallows are lined with guns, like Gretchen Whitmer had to do. I think back about my governor here. We call her Big Gretch, and you know she literally stood, because it's an open carry state, and when they came at her, the Michigan militia came to protest. They were standing while she's making law, while they're down debating. Everybody can come into the Capitol with guns, and they were all standing around the entire rotunda with their guns, trying to intimidate her. And she still stood strong, right? She still stood there in her conviction, knowing she had to do the right thing, even though I bet I can't imagine anybody that wouldn't have been scared. You know what I mean? To some degree of like, okay, that's intimidating, right? And so she still did the same thing, what she would have done regardless.
But maybe when you're so convicted, the fear goes away because
Yeah.
you're so in alignment with the
Well,
mission.
and understanding that it's a bigger purpose. So, right,
Yeah.
whatever happens, it's going to be for the higher good. And
Yeah.
I think that's something too, I like to say to myself every day, or try to say to myself for every day, is, or before I go to bed, Lord, use me as the instrument that you need me to be, because I don't know today how I'm supposed to show up. So, in your hands, right? Like, how am I showing
Mhm.
up, and who needs
Mhm.
to see it? And then I just, again, inspired, trust it that it's there, right? And it's never let me down. I mean, I've been in some really horrific situations, and at the end of the day, um, I'm able to look back and go, wow, if I hadn't done that, I would not be doing this. And if I didn't do this, I wouldn't be doing this. And I think it's all just a stepping stone, and a big circle that we always keep going back to, of, we rise up, and then things happened and they might crumble. But we never start at the same place the next time, right? We slingshot forward. The next place we land is
Yeah.
not back at the same starting point of where
Right?
our lowest point was. I'm now way forward from my lowest
Mhm.
point by, I don't even
You
know,
drove
leave, right?
you're
It
pulled
is.
back, and then you release your arrow. It's gotta come back so you get the ability to just thrust
Correct.
forward.
And I've
And
never had that not happen. It's always been a, you know, 2 steps back and 4 steps forward and then 1 step back and 5 steps forward, and it just keeps going that way, and I just have this trust that it's who knows, who knows?
yeah,
But
it's
I think it's
fantastic.
important to recognize it and say, it's important we embrace that, and I embrace the down parts of me, the parts that are dark and everything else as much as I do the light, and, um I don't know. We just, anyway.
Well, that's the type of governor that every state needs. The one that's willing to be real and human and not just give my German words come out, Sprichwords, not just give the just the words that everybody says and not answer the questions, but say, hey, I'm human. I
Right.
think that's what's missing in politics a lot is the ability to say, hey, I don't always know. And I love that in you. So as we're closing and wrapping up here, Marnie, out of respect for your time, I know you're running a lot, so
I'm
I really
enjoying it. I so haven't been able to spend time. This is the most been time spent with you in forever. So anyway,
oh, it's so
I'm loving
great. Me and
it.
all these other amazing people that are out there listening because you're such an inspiration. Like I'm so honored. In parting here, like some words of inspiration, like what would you like to say to every woman out there that maybe she's feeling down right now, or maybe, man, she's where you were, like just can I get off the couch? Like, what's your little thing? Let's leave her with that bit of inspiration to just allow her to move forward because man, we know the world needs her, right?
Yeah, I know. Oh God, there's so many. I think what I've learned about myself is I'm best when I'm the lighthouse, right? So I don't, and something I used to do right when I was in the heart of my despair, I don't know what you call it, depression, whatever, when all of
Uh,
this was just
the trauma.
couldn't, yeah, literally trying to overcome and heal. Um, I would always, say to myself, um, the harder I was on myself, I'm trying to think what I was going, damn it.
No, it's okay. The harder that you are, well, just think about this because when you were so down, you didn't give up. Where
Yeah,
was your
I had
little light of hope?
Well,
What?
no, I had it, and I'm like, "What did I"
Little-
well, I mean the lighthouse. So, what I did is I had gone full force into my nonprofit, right? I started and I'm like, immediately, without giving myself any time to heal,
Mhm.
I had to, like I felt like I had to go do something else, right? So, started a nonprofit, only to learn that I wasn't healed enough to be out there trying to help others at that point. The
Mhm.
best thing I could do was the self-care, right? The taking time to go, I love you, Marnie. Like I love you and you need some alone time. You need some time to sit and process and let that move forward. And I think that's the biggest advice I have is knowing when that time is, and honoring it, knowing when to say, um, okay, it's time to I need to beef up the tools in my tool shed, right? Like I need a journal or you talked about mental preparedness for athletes. I'm doing the same thing with governor. I'm like, okay,
Yes, you are.
it's time to get back into the daily meditation. It's time to get back into daily prayer. It's time to get back into daily journaling because without those things, I'm not going to be able to go to the next level because I don't have the tools in the tool shed to get it done. And
And
I
yes.
think that's the biggest thing that I've learned is when to say uncle and to say, it's okay that I am not okay. And I've been blessed to have, people in my life like you and others. And I will say some of the inspiration, some of the kindness, and the most kindness I've ever had given to me are from strangers, from people who
Oh,
I have never met or I never personally knew who still to this day, 7 years later from Cape Coral, will write me and say, thank you for doing this, or I came across this and I know you did it. You know, Cape Coral had their 50th, they had their 50th anniversary, or whatever, and it happens to
Yeah.
fall on my 50th birthday. It was also 50th birthday. And they came out with this book. They came out with this book of firsts, like all about Cape Coral. And girl, they left me out.
What? I was like, there's, I'm like going, yay, they were going to say,
Yeah, they
oh,
left me out. And
oh
it's
my goodness.
and it took me back, but at the same time, I'm not telling you that story for me to be like, "Oh, well, with me." I have just realized that I don't have to worry what that purpose is. I don't have to worry about the impact I make. I don't have to sit and worry and say, "Jesus, did I make enough impact on that, or did I know I did, and the impact I made is right where it should be." You know what I mean? It's where it
Yeah.
needed to be, and I
Mhm.
don't have to worry about how much. I don't have to
Yeah.
worry because, again, it's never about me, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's
Right.
about it's about
You're
my
here.
happiness and all of that. But the purpose is not to get credit or to whatever. It is about saying, what have I affected? But also knowing I may never know that impact, right?
No, you won't, you won't, you won't, because you don't even know, just by your beautiful smile, just by you acknowledging someone, they may be having the worst day, and you cannot tell, right, Marnie? You
Right,
can't tell. A woman like you looks all put together. They wouldn't have ever known that you just got beat up a couple nights before, because a lot of times you don't show the ugly, right? The girls put on the makeup, they go out, and so just you being the mayor of Cape Coral, choosing to go, all the women before us that chose to get into politics and to take the beatings and to, there all of these beautiful people. And some people don't get recognized even till after they pass, right? Then we see their great art. Then we see their great works in literature, and
sometimes
there's
hundreds, thousands of years later, right? Like,
right, and something they uncover under a pyramid somewhere, and it has a little hieroglyphic. We don't know. All we know is like you get up and you show you show up,
right,
right? And
yep.
I'm so
And I
excited
always
because
say
I
the louder people are, the louder the haters, right? The more
Mm.
I know, I'm making a bigger impact. I mean,
Yes,
that is
yes,
one way to know, right? I always say there is progress in hate. I hate it, it sounds weird to
it's a
say.
measurement. It's you're
It
getting to
it
people,
is.
you're causing them to think. Like their
Right,
first reaction, like we said, the first reaction is fear. If
right.
they feel like, oh, she's not going to hear me, or da 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 da, then they hate what they're afraid of, and so
Absolutely.
you're not to be feared in a bad way. You're to be feared in a good way, because the change that you're going to make is
Mhm.
amazing. So all the people that have been living in the shadows, they've been doing dirty things. They've been doing unkind things for their own self. Mm, the
Promotion, everything
takers.
else.
Yeah, right.
Be
That's
the
what
light.
Marnie's.
Be the light.
She, yeah, she's gonna be that lighthouse and shine the light and go, here's the safe harbor. People of Michigan, we're transforming, and through transparency, vulnerability, and me. I mean, I
Yeah.
will give you my best. That's your commitment, right?
But I will also
And
tell you, it's easy to get into that spot where somebody reminded me that a lighthouse, doesn't go around throwing out life preservers, right?
right.
So we have to understand that as a lighthouse, we are to be the light. We can't be the savior of someone. We can't make them be something that they don't want to be. And so I've
Yeah.
had to remember, as someone who's a mother, as a protector, whatever, in the beginning, after the abuse and everything, I wanted to do all this great work with domestic violence victims and do that. And I
Mhm.
realized, you know what? That's not my space. That's not my space, right? I'm not the life preserver. I am the lighthouse. And I think there's a lot of times that we have to remember that as women, that we don't have to save everyone. We don't have, I mean, just by standing up in your power, just by being that light, you are going to bring more people to where they need to be than you would ever if you were to try to go around with each,
Mhm.
and let me help you, let me help you, let me help you. Sometimes you just need to let others take their own steps, take their own time. Everybody's on their own course, and I learned that, and it's good. So
It's a
I'm
great
good.
lesson. Well, you are so valuable. You keep shining bright. I am just, like I said, so honored that you took this time to share with
Thank
us.
you.
And I know only great
Thank
things are
you for
coming.
what you're doing, because this is so important, Amy, what you're doing so that other women can listen to, people's stories and be able to put them in and fold them into their own story. And how do they, you never know who you're going to be touching, whenever these get broadcast. So that's pretty amazing too.
Thank you. Yeah, we just keep loving on one another.
Right?
Girls, we just we did this funny thing today in the chat. It was like hoes before bros. And it was like, because what is a whole HO with happily optimistic? That's we're like, let's happily optimistic girls before we're like, there is no man worth fighting over with another girl. If he's not it was very interesting and fun. We just had fun. So girls, we're just Marni, you're so truly on target for success, and anything that we can do to help the next governor of Michigan, because we know you're going to make the state as
Yeah.
amazing, as it's ready for. You're going to bring the very best of you. Thank you for shining. Thank you for being on here. Just love you, girl.
Love you too, sweetheart. And thank you.
On Target for Success podcast empowers women by sharing real, raw, and inspiring stories of perseverance, transformation, and achievement. Our mission is to highlight the journeys of successful women from all walks of life, showcasing their challenges, their victories, and to help our listeners like you unlock their potential. We believe that every single woman has a unique story worth sharing. And through this platform, we aim to uplift, educate, and inspire women worldwide to know that it is your birthright to reach your highest potential. And we so believe in you, and we love you, and we thank you for tuning in. But just know that you can do what every single woman on this show is doing as well.